I am 90 years old now. My name is Margaret Hale, and there is a quiet truth that has been sitting with me these past few years, one I can no longer push aside. Near the end, time did not feel precious. It felt empty, and it took me almost a lifetime to understand why. I wake up most mornings before the sun, not because I need to, but because my body no longer understands sleep the way it used to. The house is still, too still, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just wide. I sit at the small kitchen table with a cup of tea that goes cold before I remember to drink it. The clock ticks. I notice it now. Every sound feels larger when there's less life around it. People talk about time speeding up when you get old. For me, it slowed down. It stretched. Days became long and thin. I had hours, entire afternoons, and nowhere meaningful to place them. That was when the question began to form quietly without drama. How did I end up with so much time and so little fullness inside it? I used to believe I was doing everything right. In my 20s, I married a good man. Not a passionate one, not a cruel one either. Just steady. We built a life that looked sensible from the outside. A small house, 2 children, regular dinners, predictable weekends. I worked in an office downtown, the kind of job where you're always busy but never finished. Phones ringing, papers stacked, deadlines that felt urgent and important. Back then, time felt tight. There was never enough of it. I was always late for something, always tired, always telling myself, later I would rest. Later I would call my sister. Later I would sit with my children longer instead of rushing them through dinner and homework and bed. Later felt responsible. It felt adult. I didn't think I was choosing work over people. I thought I was choosing stability. I thought presence could wait. In my 30s and 40s, the days blended together. Mornings started early. Evenings ended with dishes and television I barely watched. My husband and I talked about logistics more than feelings. Who would pick up the kids, what needed fixing, what bill was due. We weren't unhappy. That's what I told myself. We just weren't close. And that seemed acceptable at the time. There were moments, small ones, that I brushed past. My daughter standing in the doorway wanting to tell me something while I finished an email. My son asking if I could come to his school play, and me checking my calendar instead of my heart. Conversations that began with "when you have a minute" and ended with neither of us bringing it up again. Nothing broke all at once. That's the part people don't tell you. You don't feel lost when it's happening slowly. You call it life. I remember thinking often that once things settled down, I would be more present. Once the kids were older. Once work was less demanding. Once we had a little more saved. Once. Time felt full back then because it was crowded. Crowded with tasks, expectations, noise. I mistook that for meaning. Now, sitting here decades later, The quiet feels heavy because it is honest. There is nothing left to distract me from what I postponed. The people I assumed would always be there. The conversations I believed could wait. The warmth I thought I'd return to when life finally slowed down. Life did slow down. It just didn't bring those things back with it. I don't say this to be dramatic. I say it because this is where I am now at 90, finally understanding that time doesn't feel empty at the end. By accident, it feels empty when we fill it for years with everything except ourselves, except each other. And this realization didn't come with tears or shouting. It arrived quietly like most truths do, while the tea cooled, while the clock kept ticking, while I sat alone with more time than I knew how to hold. That is where my story really begins. There was no single moment when I realized something was wrong. That's important to say. My life didn't collapse. It thinned. By the time I was in my 50s, the children were gone. Not suddenly, one at a time, boxes carried out, bedrooms slowly emptied. I remember standing in my son's room after he left for college, noticing the dust where posters used to hang. I told myself this was how it was supposed to be. Children grow up, houses get quieter. That was the goal, wasn't it? My husband and I filled the space with routines. Morning coffee, evening news, the same restaurants on Fridays. We had learned how to move around each other without friction. We called it harmony. Looking back, it was mostly avoidance. We never fought much. We also never said much that mattered. There were things I felt but didn't name. A low, steady ache. A sense that I was living beside my own life, not inside it. When it crept up, I pushed it down with busyness. I volunteered for more projects at work. I stayed late. I told myself I was useful, needed. People praised me for it. That made it easier to keep going. I didn't see that usefulness had quietly replaced intimacy. My sister called less often. At first, I was the one who missed her calls. Then she stopped trying. I noticed, but not enough to change anything. There was always a reason. Always tomorrow. My mother died when I was 62. It wasn't sudden. There were hospital rooms, long waits, the soft beeping of machines. I sat by her bed and held her hand, and in those final days, she talked more than she had in years. She told stories I'd never heard, asked questions I'd never answered. After the funeral, I returned to my routine almost immediately. I thought that was strength. I thought grief was something you managed quietly and efficiently. What I didn't realize was that I was practicing how to disappear from my own life. Retirement came and went without celebration. One day I simply stopped going to the office. I remember waking up that first Monday with nowhere to be and feeling a strange panic. I told myself I deserved the rest, that I'd earned the quiet. But quiet is different when it arrives without invitation. My husband and I tried to fill the days. We traveled a little, took walks, sat on benches and watched other people pass by. He talked about his health. I talked about errands. We rarely talked about us. It felt too late to start. Then he got sick. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden collapse, just a slow narrowing of his world. Doctor visits, medications, less walking, more sitting. I became a caretaker without noticing when the shift happened. Our conversations grew even smaller, more practical. When he died after 46 years of marriage, the house didn't feel emptier than before. That was the part that frightened me. I cried yes. I missed him. But I also realized how long we had already been gone from each other. After the funeral, people told me I was strong. I nodded. Strength had always been easier than honesty. That was when time truly opened up. Days with no shape, mornings with no urgency. I filled them at first with lists, cleaning, sorting, giving things away. I told myself I was simplifying. What I was really doing was avoiding the question that hovered quietly over everything. What had I been present for? As the years passed, friends dwindled. Some moved, some died, some simply faded. My children called, but not often. They had their own lives. I was proud of them. I didn't want to burden them with my loneliness, so I kept my voice light. Inside, time stretched thinner and thinner. I began to understand that emptiness isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in slowly after decades of choosing later. And by the time you have all the time in the world, there is very little left that knows how to meet you inside it. That understanding didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. And one of those pieces arrived on a Tuesday afternoon when I realized there was no one left I felt truly known by. That was the moment something finally broke open. I was sitting in my living room that Tuesday, the light coming in low and tired, when I understood something I had been circling for years. Time hadn't emptied itself at the end. I had been emptying it slowly, one sensible choice at a time. I thought back to all the moments I postponed without realizing they were moments. The conversations that felt inconvenient, the affection that felt inefficient, the pauses I filled instead of sitting inside them. I had treated time like a container to manage, not a place to live. When people ask what I regret, they expect big answers. Careers, money, risks not taken. The truth is quieter. I regret how often I was elsewhere. In my head, in tomorrow, in responsibility. I regret believing that showing up could wait. Nothing was stolen from me. That matters. I handed it away carefully, politely, with good reasons. That's why it took so long to see the cost. Loss looks different when it arrives as approval. Now, at 90, I understand why the days feel hollow. They are wide open, but there is little weight inside them. Meaning was never hiding at the end of life. It was scattered through the middle in ordinary afternoons I rushed through. I don't say this with bitterness. I don't have the energy for that anymore. I say it with clarity. This is the shape my life took. I loved people, but not always with my time. And time, it turns out, was the part that mattered most. If you're listening to this and you feel busy, important, needed, I won't tell you to change. I wouldn't have listened either. I'll only say this: notice where you are when someone reaches for you. Notice how often you're not really there. As for me, I sit with the quiet now. I let it be what it is. Some days I remember. Some days I simply breathe. There isn't much time left, and that's all right. I no longer try to fill it. There are faces I still carry, voices I still hear at night. I hold them gently now without chasing or fixing. This is what remains when striving ends. A softer attention, a slower heart. Not full, not empty, just here at last. And that finally is enough for an old woman like me after a very long life lived. I just stay.